Article 24. So let's move to the background of the case. As you can see here, this is the tire. Tire is an important part of any means of transportation, such as cars, bus, airplanes, and when the new tires, its life, for any reason, for example, like a flat tire is become old tires, then they will be taken to a factory to recondition to make the retreated tires so it can be used one more time. So it looks very simple, right? But it becomes this product of the dispute just because it has a lot of advantages, like it's quite safe, it can be used in any kinds of transport, and it's less pricey in comparison to the new one. So the retreated tire industry grew a lot of at that time in Brazil. So many like companies, they import the retreated tires a lot. So, however, when the retreated tires end up its life again, it becomes the waste tire. And when the rainy seasons comes, it causes the mosquito, and it leads to two risks. The first one is the malaria and the dengue on people, which means bệnh sốt rét and bệnh sốt xuất huyết, and the pollution in the soil. So does anyone here know that why is it becomes why this cause the pollution on the soil? May I ask Bảo Ly, do you know why it becomes it causes pollution?
Can you repeat?
Okay, so do you know why it causes the pollution to the soil, the retreated tire? Let me give you the clue for that. Do you know how long does it takes to break down a tire?
Maybe the pollutions of soil is the result, is the consequence of rubbish, and it's like any rubbish can't
Okay, thank you, Bảo Ly. Thank you, Bảo Ly, for your opinion. So let me tell you, the tire, it takes approximately for 50 to 30 years to decompose in the landfill, so that when you import a lot of retreated tire in your country, and then when it out of date, is out of date, so they are thrown out to the environment. So it causes a lot of the pollutions, so that Brazil imposed the import ban to prohibit importing tires and to protect the humans, animals, and plant life. Then on 20th January, the European communities request the consultations. So that is my part about the background of the case. So I may invite Mai to tell you about the main arguments of this case.
Uh, okay, so today I'm in charge of introducing you some main arguments of each parties. And now, as you can see on the screen, we will start first with the easy arguments. Let's look on the screen. In this case, EC proposed 4 main arguments. The first one is that EC claimed Brazil imposed a prohibition on the importation of retreated tires, or the import ban for short, and this prohibition was inconsistent with Article 11, Paragraph 1 of the GATT 1994. The second one, EC contended that certain Brazilian measures, in order to providing for the imposition of fines on the importation of retreated tires and on the marketing, transportation, etc., were similarly inconsistent with Article 11, Paragraph 1, or alternatively Article 3, Paragraph 4 of the GATT 1994. So the third one, EC made claims under Article 3, Paragraph 4 of the GATT 1994 in respect of certain state measures prohibiting the marketing and imposing disposal obligations on the importers of imported retreated tires. And the last one, EC challenged the exemption from the import ban and associated fines provided by Brazil to retreated tires originating in countries of the Mercosur. So EC contended that these exemptions were inconsistent with Article 1, Paragraph 1 and Article 13, Paragraph 1 of the GATT 1994. Moving on to our appellee, Brazil. As you can see on the screen, Brazil proposed 3 main arguments against the EC's claim, and initially Brazil submitted that the import ban and associated fines, as well as state measures, in order to restrict the marketing of imported retreated tires, were all justified under Article 20, Paragraph B of the GATT 1994. Furthermore, Brazil also contended that the fines associated with the import prohibition on retreated tires were justified also under Article 20, Paragraph D of the GATT 1994. And lastly, Brazil maintained that the exemption of remolded tires from Mercosur countries was justified under Article 20, Paragraph D, and Article 24 of the GATT 1994. So I have just finished presenting you some main arguments of each parties, and now I'm coming to another part, which is the main legal issues. So through careful analysis, our team come to the conclusion that this case has 2 main legal issues. The first one is whether the import ban of Brazil is justified under Article 20, Paragraph B. And the second one, whether the Mercosur exemption resulted the import ban applied in a manner that is inconsistent with the chapter of Article 20. And actually, these issues are closely related to our team's questions. So Ngọc Yến và Ngọc Thảo will respectively address these issues along with answering the questions. And right now, Ngọc Yến will be taking stage with the answer to the first question.
So hello everyone. So today I'm in charge of the first question, which is to analyze the requirements of two-tier analysis to define if the measures at the dispute is satisfied Article 20, paragraph B of the GATT. So first one, I would like to remind you guys about the two-tier analysis and the regulation of the paragraph B. So moving to the first part, what is two-tier analysis? So generally speaking, it's the examination that the panels used to determine whether inconsistent measures to be justifiable under Article 20. So because having said that it is two-tier, so the requirements of this analysis is cumulative, which means the first requirements must be met, and then the panels need to analyze the second requirements. So the two requirements of the two-tier analysis test, the first one, a panel must determine if the measures fall under one of the 10 subparagraphs listed in the Article 20 on general exception. You can see on the method to be proven by the response countries, and then the panels must determine if it's violate or not the chapters of Article 20, the GATT. So the reason why the two-tier analysis is important in this case. So we noted that in the appellate court, the EC communities has filed an appeal that contended that the panels had errors in determining the necessary of the measures. Instead, they need to analyze the chapter of Article 20 in which the measures apply in a manner that inconsistent with the GATT. However, having said that, repeatedly that the analysis is two-tier, so the appellate bodies has pointed out that the sequence of the panels is absolutely correct because they need to determine the problem in two cumulative stages, two requirements. And is it also noticeable that to be eligible to as an exception under Article 20, the measures must be met both two elements in the two-tier analysis. Okay, so moving to my next discussion, which is the Article B of the paragraph B of Article 20 on general exception. It is the measures that necessary to protect human, animal, land, life, or health. So there are three main things that is the requirements under the paragraph B. The first one is the existence of a risk for human health. The second one is the level of protection that the countries wishes to achieve when they impose a restrictive measure. And the last one is the existence of other measures that consistent or less consistent, but enables the responding country to have the same level of protection as they wishes when they apply the measure. So here on the screen is the graph. It shows the general procedures of the necessity test. So in this, to determine if the measures is satisfied under paragraph B, the word necessary is very important, and it can we can say that it's varied in each precedent to the case. Okay, so move next to the requirement of under paragraph B. So to be eligible as an exception, a measure need to be designed with the objective goals is to protect human, animal, land, life, or health, and it's necessary for achieving the policy objective. So two aforementioned elements is what the panels and the appellate bodies in this case try to analyze and determine correctly. Okay, so may I have the next screen? Okay, regarding to the first problem, which is the policy objectives. So it's remarkable that the appellate bodies and the panels has pointed out that in this policy objectives, the protection of human life and health is determined to be the most vital issues. However, the problem of the environment, to protect the environment, is no less important. So it's the first point that we need to notice about the policy. Okay, so next one, to assess the problem of the policy objective, the panels have analyzed the results, aims, or policy objectives when they apply the imposed ban on the retreated tires. So Brazil claims that they proposed the import ban to prevent the propagation of mosquitoes that transmit malaria and dengue fever. Secondly, they have reduced the exposure risk to human, life, or health resulted in the accumulation of waste ties. And the last one is to reduce the risk of waste tie to the maximum extent possible. So the last one is the level of protection that Brazil wishes to achieve when they impose the import ban. So in the first part of the presentation, news already tell you about that the reconditioned used tires or retreated tires are sold at the very cheaper price in Brazil. So as a result, Brazil found that it leads to the faster accumulation of waste tires, and then it will providing the breeding grounds for mosquitoes and that transmit malaria and dengue fever. However, the tire fires after the useful life of a tire is very difficult to control, and the disposal of waste tires is under the soil may cause soil pollution. However, to deal with this problem is very difficult because it's not only costly to collect the waste tire that scatters under the soil in the vast territory like Brazil. Moreover, it's technologically impossible to collect on the waste tires without proposing any negative impact on the environment. So that's why Brazil imposed the import ban to protect the human life and health, as well as to protect the soil and the environment. Okay, so next one is about the necessity of measure. So it is a very complicated question, a complicated test for both the panels and the appellate body. So first, it needs to be noted that to prove the necessity of the measure, the Brazil has to prove that there is a relationship of ends and means between the measures and the policy objectives. So in other words, we can say that it contributes to the policy objective achievement, and nevertheless, the quantitative methods is not always required. So here we would have, in this case, the quantitative methods and the qualitative methods, định lượng và phương thức định tính. Okay, so move next to analyze the necessity of the measure. So to be easy for you guys to follow the assessment, like the process, the stage that the panels use to determine that question. So panels have evaluated two following questions. Question 1.1, whether the import ban can contribute to the reduction in numbers of waste tires generated in Brazil. And question 1.2, whether a reduction in the number of waste tires can contribute to the reduction of risk to human, animal, land life, or health. So let's start with question number 1.1. Okay, so here we can see that the panels has analyzed the objective in a coherent sequence, that the impact of the replacement on retreated tires with new tires on reduction of waste. And the next one is the imported retreated tires can replace domestically retreated tires. So they found out that at the time of the examination in Brazil, the retreated tire is capable of retreating in this country. So if the import ban in place will have to reduce the waste time if imported retreated tires replace either domestically retreated made from tires used and with new tires capable of retreating. Moreover, if the import ban in place also encourage the domestic retreaters to retreat more domestic use tires, and then the consumers in the countries will need to switch to retreated tires produced domestically or new tires. So it's the two kinds of tires that will have the longer lifespan in comparison to the retreated or used tires. Okay, so therefore the panel concluded that the import ban is capable contributing to the reduction of overall amount of waste tire generated in Brazil, because imported tire can be substituted for by new tires, and at the time of the examination, at least some domestic tires are being retreated in Brazil at the movement. Okay, so move to the question 1.2. So where does the contribute to the reduction of the accumulation of waste tire will contribute to the objective of Brazil is to protect human or environment? So this question is also very hard to approach because the extent of the question either actual accumulation of waste itself. So the accumulation will constitute the association with a current risk and issue, and including providing the breeding grounds for vector of disease. So as a result, the panels concluded that the import ban of retreated tires is capable of making contribution to the objective pursued by Brazil, and it could lead to the reduction in overall number of waste tires, and in turn will reduce the potential of specific risk to human, land life, or health. Okay, so regarding in this problem, the panels also need to analyze the alternatives that proposed by European communities. So regarding the alternatives, can I have the next screen with the alternatives? So at the report, the panels has rendered that the alternatives from Brazil cannot have Brazil achieve the same level of protection. Moreover, it carry on risk and hazards, as well as does not attract or eliminate the disposal risk of Brazil. So in conclusion, the panels found that the alternatives proposed by Brazil was deemed as unnecessary and unreasonable to replace the import ban that Brazil has imposed. So EC then filed an appeal claiming that the panels were erroneous in the legal standard. And in fact, to analyze the contribution of the import ban, the panel should, in the view of EC, should quantify the actual contribution, which means they tell that the panel should quantify the reduction of waste tires resulting from the import ban in practice. So they need using the number to prove that the import ban this contribute to the policies of Brazil and contribute to the reduction of waste time. So instead, the panels in this case has used the qualitative methods in which they analyze the policy and the contribution of the import ban to the policy. So they think that they should make in line of the objective, not in quantitative methods, not in number. So now we can see that's how the appellate body views with this problem with the EC's appeal. So the first, with the policy objective of the Brazil, the panel found that the appellate body found that the panels carry the analysis in a coherent sequence. First, they analyze the nature of risk of that's what use types made risk to human and environment. Moreover, they also analyze the objective pursuit by Brazil, whether it's necessary or unnecessary to human. And they also analyze the level of protection of Brazil. In this case, is to be the maximum extent possible. So the panel methodologies to analyze the problem has taken place in a coherent sequence. So it can be deemed as reasonable, and the contribution is the evidence is sufficient to conclude that the import ban is necessary in absence of reasonably available alternatives. And moreover, the panels, the appellate bodies also noticed that the contribution of the measures has to be weighed against its trade restrictiveness and taking into account the importance of the interest and the underlying the objective pursued by it. So then they think that they found out, they concluded that the import ban produced a contribution to the realization of its objective. Okay, so what is the appellate body views on the alternatives proposed by the EC is they have the same ideas with the panels, or they have contradictory to the decision of the panel. So Brazil, the EC has pointed out some alternatives with the import ban, which they think less trade restrictive, but propose the same policy objective to Brazil. For example, landfilling, stockpiling, incineration of waste type, and material recycling. However, most to analyze the alternatives to be necessary or unnecessary, the appellate bodies consider two following issues. The first one is the objective of the alternatives, and the next one is they notice that the alternative must reserve the responding rights. Here is the Brazil right to achieve the level of protection, which means they will analyze the objective and whether the alternatives can help Brazil to achieve the level of protection the same as they wishes to achieve with the import ban. So they found that most of the proposed alternatives are waste management and disposal measures that are remedial in character, which means they carry on risk or they cannot like display the import ban. They just better implementation of existing collection and disposal scheme that are complementary to the import ban. So for example, with the landfilling method, the appellate bodies has pointed out that in the time periods, it will cause the soil pollution. So it carries the own risk and hazards, and it impose a negative impact on the environment. So it cannot be deemed as reasonable to display the import ban. Moreover, we can, you guys can read the paragraph 163 to 166 of the appellate bodies report. In that they point out the risk of the alternatives proposed by ECs on the problem in this problem. Okay, so then they concluded that non-generation methods are necessary to Brazil objectives and help them to achieve the same level of protection. So as aforementioned, and on the reasons from the appellate bodies have the same ideas have the same view with the panels that the import ban is necessary under paragraph B, Article 20, because it's necessary to protect human, animal, land, life, or health. And on the alternative from the EC was deemed as unreasonable. So they concluded that the import ban is necessary, and they reject the EC's claim. Okay. So next one, to the second question, I would like to invite Ngọc Thảo to analyze the second question for you guys.
Okay, thank you, Ngọc Tiến, and hello, everybody. Good morning. Okay, so today I will be in charge with the question number 2. And about the content of the question, I guess that you guys can see on your screen now. So in my question, there are 2 clauses, okay? The first one, I will analyze about the application of chapeau of the Article 20 JTT, and that in the connection with Mercosur's requirement. And then I will discuss with you a little bit about like the conflict, okay, between FTAs and WTO rules. So let's go to the first one, the analysis, sorry. So to let you know about like the general view that I would like to go through, that I will discuss about 3 views, okay? The first one, I would like to mention about the panel's approach. The second thing, I would like to mention about the appellate body's view. And the last one, I will give you like about the conclusion, okay? Okay, so let's go to the first one, that is the panel's approach. Now, if you guys have the law, okay, JTT 1994 in hand, or maybe you will have the PDF on your laptop, please help me open Article 20, okay? And then we can take a quick look at that article. Because in this article, when you read that, I would like to emphasize again that the chapeau's requirements are twofold. Okay, so why do I say that? First of all, according to the chapeaus of Article 20 JTT, is prescribed that subject to the requirement that such measures are not employed in a manner which would constitute a means of arbitrary or unjustifiable discrimination between the countries where the same condition prevail, or a disguised restriction on international trade, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and you can see on my screen that I have expressed, oops, sorry, wait, please turn back. Thank you. Okay, so we're still here, okay? So when you read weekly, okay, about this article, you can see that first, a measure provisionally justified under one of the paragraph of the article. They say that it must not be applied in the manner that would constitute arbitrary or unjustifiable discrimination between countries, okay, where the same condition prevail. And second thing, you can see, I also mentioned already that this measure must not be applied in a manner that would constitute a disguised restriction on international trade. So after finding that the import ban were provisionally justified under Article 20B of the GATT 1984, and the panel has evaluated that whether this application by Brazil satisfied the requirement of the chapeau of this article or not. So now please move on the panel's approach. So yeah, please help me show on the, yeah, that's it. Okay, so for the panel, the Mercosur exemption, they say like, it does not seem to be motivated by capricious or unpredictable reasons, because it was adopted further to a ruling within a framework of Mercosur, which has binding legal effects for Brazil as a party to Mercosur. So first, according to the panel, because Brazil acted, you can see that Brazil acted under a judgment from Mercosur's tribunal. So the action could not be viewed as not capricious or random. And that's the reason why from the view of the panel, they suppose that if such the imports were to take place in such the amounts, that the achievement of the objective of the measure at issue would be significantly undermined the application of the import ban in conjunction with the Mercosur exemption would constitute a means of unjustifiable discrimination or arbitrary discrimination. But at the time of the panel's examination, they depend on the volume of the product. And the product here, we have known at the beginning of our presentation that we have introduced to you, that is the retracted tires, okay? They depend on the volume of the products. So that's the reason why they make the conclusion that when Brazil applied the import ban, the volume, okay, it is significantly undermined. So that's the reason why they think that the application would not have any possibilities, okay, to cause an arbitrary or unjustifiable discrimination. And then they also suppose, okay, please move on to the next slide, please. But after that, when the EC make the argument to the appellate body also expressed about their views, and they have conversed like many findings of the panels, as you can see on my screen now. I have summarized from our research so that you can follow on my screen. So according to the appellate body, analyzing whether discrimination is arbitrary or unjustifiable usually involves an analysis that relates primarily to the cause, or we can say rationale of the discrimination. The assessment of whether discrimination is arbitrary or unjustifiable should be made in the light of the objective of the measure. So I think that now you can think that, okay, what is the objective of the measure? Okay, so at the beginning, we have introduced to you as well that the objective of Brazil, when they would like to apply this ban, because they want to protect the health of the citizen and they want to solve the environmental issues. So that's the reason why they decide to launch this application. But however, the appellate body has argued that this assessment of the panel that is unreasonable, okay? And the object, because that the ruling issues that bears no relationship to the legitimate objective pursued by the import ban. So that's the reason why they reversed this conclusion. And the second thing, when I talk about the objective of the measure, you can remember that the panel used the method that the volumes of the product. But this one is, how can I say, is when we talk about the volume of the products, it cannot stable all the time, right? Because over the year, maybe it can change, it can fluctuate. So that's the reason why it's inconsistent when Brazil apply this import ban, and it's not unfair. So that's the reason why I would like to move on the next thing, the next point in my presentation, excuse me. Yep, okay. And before I move on to the conflict of FTA and the WTO rules, I would like to mention one more thing. Sorry, I forgot. That's about the disguised restriction, okay? I have analyzed according to the first fold, that is arbitrary and unjustifiable discrimination. The second thing, that is the disguised restriction on international trade, I have not mentioned. Okay, so you can think here that Brazil is a country in Mercosur, okay? So that's the reason why they have they have their own provisions. So Brazil have the obligation and have the right to apply those provisions to the country with many trade. So that wise, the appellate body argues that when the Brazil apply this ban is not unfair because it can motivate a flow of trade, that non-Mercosur country could not import the retracted tire to Brazil, while the Mercosur country can do that. So you can say that, although they say it gives, but it's very clear that it is something unfair, right, in here, right? Okay, so the last clause in my question that I would like to discuss today, that is the conflict of FTA and the WTO rules. Because I don't have much time, so I will go through the question. So FTA here, that is the free trade agreement, okay, and WTO rules. So operating based on the principle of non-discrimination and the principle of free trade member, WTO requires WTO member what? They are to grant immediate and unconditional most favored nation treatment, okay? We also remember the shortcut of this one is MFN, most favored nation. Treatment to the product of other members with respect to tariffs and other trade matters. But however, Article 24, that is, I would like to emphasize here. So if you have the blow, you can open Article 24 to take a weak look, okay, at Clause 8, okay, Article 24.8. However, the Article 24 of the JTT, that is, contains a specific exception for free trade agreement, or we also know that FTA. So as such, FTA members are allowed, okay, they have the permission to grant countries who are party to the agreement more favorable trade benefit than those extended to other trading partners. But nevertheless, as the FTAs have generally been viewed as vehicles of trade liberalization. So Article 24 of the JTT requires that the party must notify the WTO of their favorable treatment granted to the other's goods, and the treatment is then subject to WTO reviews. You guys understand this one? Okay. FTA, so Brazil would like to grant like the favorable treatment to other countries. Yeah. Behind that, they need to follow like the rules of FTA. But before that, they need to apply this one to WTO, because WTO will subject to that. Okay, so on the other hand, even though the JTT required that FTAs eliminate tariffs and restrictive regulation, it allows FTA party to apply tariffs, restriction, and GATT. This thing will be quite confused. So that's the reason why it caused to the inconsistencies. If a country like Brazil apply Article 24 as like a custom union, okay? That is also like the main thing I would like to focus. And moreover, please go to the other slide for me, please. Thank you. And after we research, we also have known that the inconsistent, like the conflict between FTA and WTO rules is also depend on substantially on trade and the status of safeguard measures. So I think that you guys can take a note to your notebook, and because we don't have much time, so I think that with this one, we can you can have more research at home, because when you search on Google, you can find any more information. Because this one, we would like just to expound the answer. But yeah, this is also my last explanation for question number 2. Thank you so much for your understanding and your paying attention. Thank you so much. And now Q&A time. Thank you, teacher. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, the groups, for your like quite clear and interesting presentations. It's quite impressive to me, especially the presentation of Thảo. It's really impressed to me. Now, yeah, well, you, as I have mentioned earlier, you have prepared quite clear report following with that clear presentations. And yeah, the questions to the audience is quite useful in order to get their attentions. And under these presentations now, you have sufficient analysis on all the requirement concerning the 2 questions. And yeah, under this case, then you may have the idea how the necessity test in the 20B of GATT will be interpreted, and also how Article 20 in trade rule will be applied in a specific case. The only questions that I have right now is that because you use all the times, even also the time for the Q&A, and so we don't have much time right here for the Q&A part. But yeah, I need you to clarify 2 things. First, relating to the what you say, the status of safeguard measures, which come with the last slide. would you please explain to the class member how the safeguard measures happen right here in this context? And the second one, I know the group have read through the case, and so would you please share with us how the import ban of the retreaded tires it has been challenged both under the domestic court of the Brazil and under the Mercosur tribunal, because under the slide it has not mentions right here in this context. So does the group got the two questions? Is it unclear?
Yeah, we have noted your question. Could you please give us 2 to 3 minutes so that we can have a week discussion about those questions to express to you and our classmates?
Yeah, 2 or 3 minutes is okay.
Yep, thanks a lot. Okay, I apologize for letting the class like wait first. Okay, so teacher, I would like to in charge with your first question that you made to our group, that you would like us to explain more a little bit about the status of the safeguard measures. Because at the end of our presentation, we don't have enough time. So in here, according to our research, we understand that the status of safeguard measure, we have read about the Article 19 in GATT, and in the Article 19 of GATT, that we can see here that it have granted to the countries in WTO that they have the right to temporarily restrict the import from other country to their territories, because they evaluate about the number of the product that the domestic fluctuate nhà sản xuất ở trong nước. Okay, that they can like produce with the value of the product that is greater or maybe greater or equal to the product that the other country can import to their territory. So with this safeguard measure, they can protect, or they can balance about the domestic production in their country to not cause any serious injury for their industry in our territory. So that is like.
But why it is relevant right here in this context? Please explain.
Oh yeah, okay. Because with Brazil, I think that Brazil is in the Mercosur. Mercosur here, we understand that Mercosur is like a custom union. So that the reason why when Brazil is in Mercosur, not just Brazil, but other countries in Mercosur, they are a group of countries in a custom union. So when the Brazil apply the import ban from other WTO members that are non-Mercosur countries, they can balance, they can protect about the industry, the production of Mercosur's countries. So I think this one is relevant to the case.
Okay, so right here, yeah. But thank you for your explanations. But and I hear no objection right here and in the groups, and also with other members of the WTO. But I have to fix this conclusion, because it will not relevant with safeguard. And if you guys all have attended my seminar last week, then you know the requirement and all the conditions that must be met under Article 19 of GATT, and also under the safeguard agreement. And so there's no connections. Okay, there's no connections between the exception under Article 24 and the safeguard measures. Right here, there's no connections, and so you cannot put them all together in the same context, because they will follow and fall under different requirement. And Article 19 and also the safeguard agreement has been designed for another circumstances. Okay, it will not fall under this situation, and so please keep that in mind. And also, because I have not much time right here to further explain, but you need to read further into the field, because it's a kind of misunderstanding. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your guide.
Okay, and so how about the second questions? Please give it very precisely and short answer.
So, Miss, I would like to answer the second part of the question. Is why the import ban would challenge in the Mercosur's tribunal arbitration. So the Uruguay has challenged the legalities of the import ban under the Mercosur agreement, and then that they found that the import ban is like the violation of Mercosur law, as in a custom union, they cannot like impose the tariffs or any trade restriction activities. So the import ban from Brazil has already violated the trade enhancing point, the principle of Mercosur countries. So that's why it was challenged under the Mercosur Tribunal's arbitration by Uruguay.
Sorry, who had just speaking, because I cannot follow you?
Yes.
Is it Thảo or another?
Yeah, that is Ngọc Yến.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the internet has cannot follow up with your presentation, so and with your answer, and so I cannot follow. The screen is appearing that Thảo is speaking, but I'm listening with another voice, and that's confused me. Okay, Ian, thank you for your answer. But right here, you have only mentioned the arbitration tribunal resigned under the Mercosur tribunal, right? And
yes.
Here, why I have to put this question to the discussions, because now the import ban of the Brazilian government was sued by the Uruguay to the Mercosur Arbitration Court. And so that is the thing you have just mentioned, but also at the same time, the import ban also opposed by domestic manufacturer under the domestic court. And so the Brazil domestic retreated tires manufacturers from used tires that they sued the government actions in Brazilian courts, and they argue that the ban on importing used tire violates the Brazilian constitutions, and these manufacturers prevailed, and the court issues and they asked the government to allow the import of the used tire. So as a result, the retreated tires are allowed to be imported from Mercosur into Brazil, according to the arbitration's result of the Mercosur. And also the used tires are also allowed to be imported into Brazil by order of the Brazilian court, while at the same time, the import of retreated tires has also allowed to be imported into Brazil from other sources outside of the Mercosur. All these kinds of importations were still banned, right? And so that is the more fact that I would like to include into the group presentations, because this case is quite interesting, and also for the relationship between environment and the trade liberalizations. They also show a very complex relationship here in this case, and for the last questions that the group have just provided their comments. Well, as you can see in the case, it is the thing I would like to discuss with the group only. It's not the questions. Now here, when we read through the case, then you can see that the Brazil has to comply with the rulings of the appellate body instead of that of the Mercosur Arbitral Tribunal. And so this dispute posed the supremacy of the WTO rules over those of the regional trade agreement. in sustaining multilateralism, which can leave, as you have mentioned, the word constituent members in legal quandary. And so for this case shows that, and also shows the problem arising in the multilateral trading system, that the WTO have put their rules or their law at a higher level in compare with other rules that follow and set out by the FTA or the CU. And that is the thing I would like to know the comments from the group. But right here under this analysis, you have just only mentioned the conflict between the two. So you can further develop the evaluation, develop the context here. Look at it at a wider scope, and then this may come with further problems arising in this system. All right, so yeah, but still it's quite interesting to know about the case, I think, and for all the class members. Now we need to jump immediately to the second presentation because we don't have much time. And for the shrimp case, it's also another interesting, and also because of the reason that it's close to our country, and so it's worth for us to spend times on going through the details of the case and discuss further about the legal aspect that arise from the case. Okay, so I need the second group to be ready right now.
Good morning, everyone. This is Group 1, and there are 4 members in my group, where my Kim Phụng, Quang Minh, and me, Thảo Vi. We're here today to cover a case about anti-dumping measures of the United States on the southern shrimp from Vietnam. This talk is divided into 2 main parts. Firstly, I would like to talk about the background of this case and main arguments of each party, and then we will focus on discuss and analyze 3 questions relating to this case. Now, let's start by looking at the background of this case. Vietnam is the complainant and the United States is the respondent. The anti-dumping investigation on water shrimp products of Vietnam were initiated by the U.S. Department of Commerce, called DOC, in January 2004, because the DOC determined that it was impracticable to individually examine all Vietnamese exporters. Investigations were conducted against certain exporters called selected exporters because they exported the large volume. The original investigation was in 2004. The DOC used the zeroing methodology to calculate individual dumping margins. You can see the figures on our slide. And on the first and second and third administrative review, the DOC continued to use zeroing methodology to calculate individual dumping margins for selected exporters. However, the DOC applied the all other rate established on the basis of margins calculated in original investigation with zeroing to non-selected respondents. And facing with the risk that DOC continued to use the same method as used in the second and third review, leading to unfavorable results in the fourth review. In February 2010, the government commenced a case in consultation with the U.S. government. Now we move into the main arguments of each party. In this case, there are many arguments relating to many claims, but we just focus on main arguments about two main claims. Firstly, it claims that the DOC application of zeroing in the administrative reviews at issue is inconsistent with Article 2.4 of the anti-dumping agreement. Vietnam argued that the fair comparison in Article 2.4 of ADA created an obligation for the investigation authority to make a fair comparison between export price and normal values. However, using zeroing method in review violated this obligation because it changed the prices of certain export transactions and artificially inflated the magnitude of dumping, result in the higher margins of dumping and making a positive determination of dumping more likely. Therefore, the zeroing method were inconsistent with Article 2.4. About the U.S. argued that the Article 2.4 did not prohibit zeroing because it's not mentioned about how to treat the results of comparison make and demand an aggregation of comparison. Besides, the U.S. supposed that the higher margin calculated with zeroing did not relate to the unfair because there were irrelevant relation between higher or lower dumping margins and fairness or unfairness. Moving to the main argument regarding the claim that the DOC reliance of